Okay, let's take a look now at a couple of other categories of lipids here. This is from section 3, the non-glyceride lipids. We've already looked at the steroids. Now quickly I want to look at waxes and sphingolipids. So here are a couple of examples of waxes. This is beeswax and whale oil. Kind of a misnomer there to call it an oil. It is very waxy. The big difference with these is that in addition to having your fatty acid, which would be here, this would be with 14 methylene groups, a methyl at the end, and the carboxyl here, that's a 16 carbon saturated fatty acid. But rather than being esterified to glycerol, it's instead esterified to a single long chain alcohol. You can see here there are 30 carbons in this long chain alcohol that was joined right here with an ester linkage to the palmitate, which is the conjugate base of palmitic acid, which is the 16 carbon acid we see here. So this is beeswax. And then, again, whale oil, once known as spermaceti, came from a gland in the head of whales. These things were massive. I was really kind of shocked when I read a little bit about it. But this one here is called cetyl palmitate. Now the cetyl there, root coming from, I'm not sure the root word of that, but cetaceans include whales and dolphins, so that CET is part of that. Again, palmitate for the palmitic acid that we see here on the left, and then the long chain alcohol would have been 16 carbons, 15 methylene groups in the methyl, and then there would have been a hydroxyl here, which esterified to the carboxyl group. So that's the typical thing with waxes, is that it's a fatty acid joined by an ester linkage to a long chain alcohol. Another thing that I want to talk about here, the sphingolipids, and they are all derived from this, which is called sphingosine. You can see a long chain of carbon with a degree of unsaturation right here, this double bond. But rather than a carboxyl group toward the end, you've got a couple of alcohol hydroxyl functional groups. You have an amine group. It's not just an amine group, it is a protonated amine group. NH2 would be an amine. Add a third hydrogen that has a positive charge, and you've got a protonated amine. And this is sphingosine. Now from that, we can make things such as this sphingomyelin. You might recognize the term myelin, as in the myelin sheath, which is a fatty coating on some nerves. And here we have the sphingosine. We have an amide linkage up here, where a fatty acid has been joined to the amine group, and that is something again called an amide group. And then we have a phosphate group. That's called a phosphate ester, where the phosphate OH reacted with this alcohol. And then you've got the phosphocholine group down here. Choline coming off of the phosphate group. So that's sphingomyelin. That's one of the sphingolipids found in nerve tissue. There are also other compounds. Sides. Start with the ceramide and the amide, again having to do with this amide linkage up here. And then they have, this particular one is a glucocerebroside because it has a glucose connected. There is also a galactocerebroside. The glucocerebrosides are found in the cell membranes of macrophages. The galactocerebrosides are fairly common in brain tissue. So that's where you're going to find a lot of these sphingolipids, is in nervous system tissue, although they're found in other parts as well, but they're very common there. All right, so that's a short and sweet completion of Section 3, and I keep referring to Section 3. You've got to go all the way back to the first video of this series about the skinny young fats, to where I sort of did an outline. And Section 3 was the non-glycerides. I did a whole video on steroids, and now we've looked here at waxes and sphingolipids and even glycolipids. So that's going to be it for this one. See you on the other side.